Welcome, everyone. My name is Shamananda. I'm so pleased and grateful to be here today, joining you all live on YouTube for episode 9. This is Mr. John Atkinson.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? So excited to be back for episode 9. We have an incredible discussion and topic today, all about breakthroughs, you guys. Breakthrough in your lifestyle, and if you own a business as well. This last weekend was part of a 4-day business event, and that word breakthrough comes up a lot, Guru, for a lot of people. So I wanted to dive in today with what you do with your clients, what I've experienced with you as well, and just kind of talking about breakthrough in the four bodies. So if anybody's tuning in first time, the four bodies is your spiritual body, your mental, emotional, and your physical body. And my first question to you, Guru, was asking you how, first off, what does a breakthrough mean to you? And then what is a breakthrough in regards to the four bodies?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Okay, so a breakthrough. If I hear people talking about a breakthrough, or if I'm trying to explain a breakthrough for somebody else, what I'm talking about is breaking through resistance and complacency. It's usually a wall of a fear of some kind, some sort of resistance that's not allowing you to get from point A to point B. So you're breaking through that resistance and getting to the other side in order for you to achieve a different result from what you're getting already. So a breakthrough in life, as an example, might look like being afraid to go swimming and then pushing through the fear and taking lessons and discovering that you're safe to do so, and then feeling perfectly comfortable swimming. So that would be a breakthrough.
Mhm. So good. And then in regards to the breakthrough of the four bodies, break that down per body of what a breakthrough could look like
Okay.
um, with your work, because that's your specialty. And I wanted to share, you guys, is breakthroughs, happen on the four bodies a lot faster than we think, and it could happen in a short amount of time through your sessions and through your works, and also through the homework you give your clients as well. So just kind of expand on that, Guru.
Sounds good. Yeah. So breakthrough with the physical body. I'll start with the most dense body to the least dense. So we'll start with the physical. So a breakthrough with the physical body would be, uh, you know, being able to. Uh, Maybe it has to do with exercise. Maybe it has to do with overcoming an addiction of some kind. So breaking through. Maybe you're addicted to. Let's say you're addicted to chocolate, and your physical body is craving something. So and then stopping the chocolate eating. So and then going through the withdrawals of sugar addiction, and then eventually, if you stop all sugar, not just chocolate, of course. And then on the other side of that, your breakthrough would be no longer being addicted to sugar or chocolate, right? So another
Mhm.
form of physical breakthrough would be, uh, you know, maybe getting to the point where you're at the gym and you're actually physically pushing yourself in endurance to the point where you are able to run that extra mile, or get up to a heavier weight set, or exercise for longer, or even exercise at all. So
Mhm.
maybe it has to do with uh, you know, drinking enough water, getting into better health, just things with the physical body breakthroughs. And keep in mind too that your bodies will often intermix. So some of those are very emotional issues. So going to the gym for some people it's emotional for them. They have a hard time with it. And there's a lot of different reasons why. But if we're going into an emotional breakthrough, we're talking about breaking through different types of thought processes that aren't serving you, that's painful. So breaking through pain, and that could be getting over a breakup, or just and processing through that so it's healthy and so you feel safe and secure and whole and complete again. So that could be a form of a common form of a emotional breakthrough. Getting going through the stages of grief for a death that you experienced in your life, or something where somebody said something and it hurt your feelings, and you get to process through that, and perhaps you get to break through the reasons why it's hurting you. So mentally, it's more about thoughts and thought processes. So an example of a breakthrough there would be how you're constructing your thoughts, and you're in noticing different patterns and being able to break through and creating new patterns instead of continuing to formulate the old ones that aren't serving you. So a breakthrough in the mental body would be creating new patterns and recognizing the old ones so that you become more effective. And a form of a spiritual breakthrough would have to do with, you communicating with your higher self in a more clear and concise level. Actually, starting a spiritual practice, going through meditation, going through journaling, and talking to that part of yourself, that's the higher part of yourself, and really connecting. There's a million breakthroughs. I can mention them all, but I guess those are examples of a few.
Hmm. I think it's so good, and how you highlighted, just because we have a breakthrough, say on the physical, how, excuse me, how that relates to other body other bodies. Like the physical, like you said, can be related to the emotional, or the physical can be related to the spiritual. Uh, Expand on that part, because as you and I know, the four bodies, we embody all four bodies, and someone that's tuning in may not grasp that at first, but once you break it down, has a better idea of, hey, having a breakthrough on one body impacts all three of the other ones.
Absolutely. And as I go into this question, I just want to give a shout out to Lexi James, who is watching us right now. Lexi, I just want you to know I'm winning the staring contest. Okay, I'm winning, and I'm doing it right now. All right.
Love you, Lexi.
Love you, Lexi. So, how the different bodies affect each other? There is let's see, as an example, you know there's a lot of emotion that goes into things that you hold on to physically, and that's part of the reason why it gets put there. So if you're having an issue with, we talked about a breakup, a lot of the time the breakup energy ends up right by your sacral, right in the navel area, in your gut. It ends up different places too. If it was a burden to you, you might feel it in your shoulders and feel cramping. If you feel like you're out of balance with it, you might get hip pain. If you feel like you haven't been, or if you don't realize it even, but if you have been inflexible in the situation, you might feel different things in your joints as pain. So that's a one way that these things, kind of intermingle, intertwine. We're living in tangent with all four bodies at once. So a lot of the time, they all work in conjunction with each other anyway. So that's just an example. Mental and emotional body are very close and operate together. They're almost the same frequency as far as tangible and intangible, and they pair very well together. They work together, so oftentimes they're paired very easily. Uh, but the physical and the spiritual, so it's pairing the physical and the most tangible and the least tangible, which is the spiritual, they often go together because of the balance that they have. Because they're on the extreme sides. Because the physical body is very tangible, you use all of your senses to experience it, whereas the spiritual body is the least tangible. And so, oftentimes, in order to offset the balance between the two, and in order for them to be, it's just easier for them to work together, which is why a lot of the time, the way spiritually being able to remove things from people's bodies physically, I mean, it makes it really easy because of the way the spiritual body works with the physical. I hope that wasn't confusing. If I was, then please ask questions so that I can
No, that
clarify.
was really, really well put in the fact of walking someone through that. I was thinking of when you were saying about the physical and emotional. Why is it for someone when they do break free of something or have a breakthrough moment that they still sometimes feel stuck, even though they've made incredible strides in that area of their life? So, for example, how you brought up the breakup, right? Or, uh, earlier how you said break through that wall of resistance. How come sometimes when someone breaks through that, they still at times feel heavier, or at times it takes some time to integrate, right? So touch on the integration process, but why is it sometimes energetically they might feel a little heavier at first, and then that subsides to, wow, waking up and, hey, I've had a breakthrough.
Hmm. That's a really, really, really good question. And I guess the easiest way to answer that would be that full and complete healing with any issue gets to happen in all four bodies. And if you don't hit all four bodies, you're not going to be complete with anything that you're healing from. It doesn't matter what it is. So if it is a physical issue, you get to go through the mental and emotional and the spiritual implications of what happened to you. So, as an example, if you hurt your knee, and let's say it's because you're really stubborn in your life or you're experiencing somebody else being really stubborn, and let's say it's on your receiving side, and so on your left side, so meaning like how you're receiving somebody else's stubbornness, just as an example of the symbology. And so let's say you go to you go to physical therapy and you have your surgery and you get all of that done, but you didn't work through the other bodies. It's going to come back. It's not going to completely heal, because the reason why it was created to begin with had nothing to do with the physical thing, even though it might have seemed like that. It might have been a freak accident. It could have been anything. But the truth is we manifest the lessons we're meant to learn, and that's just the way
Mm.
life works. So if we're thinking about the knee and we didn't go through the mental and emotional and just say, okay, so emotionally I have been suppressed by so and so, and they haven't been flexible with how I've been receiving them, and it's been very damaging to me, and I've been obviously taking it on physically. You get to process through that and recognize that it's connected. And then the other part of it would be the and it depends on the degree too, because sometimes people can just overcome physical stuff and they just keep moving, and maybe naturally they just process through all the bodies, they don't even realize it, but for the bigger stuff you really do. And then of course, spiritually it would be about your soul's lesson and why this is important for your growth, and the repetition of that, and so you just got to go through all the bodies and figure out why it's happening so you can have complete healing. What was the second part of your question?
The second part of that was how at times like people feel like they have gone through, which you answered, gone through that breakthrough, and then they kind of go backwards. What would you say, like someone tuning in, maybe they feel this way, is they've made a breakthrough recently, and then all of a sudden they're kind of going back to where they were at, and you kind of said we're manifesting those moments even to go backwards a little bit, but then all of a sudden they break through again, even more of a breakthrough, and they wind up in a whole new unknown territory of a fresh new start for themselves on the four bodies. Kind of expand about that, is like when someone does have a breakthrough, because I was following you too, is if it's not done by all four bodies, you are going to go backwards. But after that happens and all four bodies, you really heal them, and you've had the breakthrough on all four levels of of the bodies, and where you're at, why does that happen per se? Like manifesting, okay, I'm manifesting a breakthrough, that happens, then all of a sudden I feel like I'm going backwards, and then all of a sudden I wake up and I'm like, whoa, like I'm kind of in unknown territory, because I feel like that has happened to myself. especially working with you, is like, we grow so much, you guys, and sometimes, like Guru, like you're saying, is we can't see the tangible. So I can see the physical, like when I go to the gym, my outside body, but the three other bodies are not tangible. So kind of touch on that in the fact of when the breakthrough does happen and we go forward, then backward, kind of like a bow and arrow, right? All of a sudden, the farther we're back, that we have like a setback per se, and then we get launched forward, we're like in unknown territory, and sometimes it's kind of scary for people.
Right. So what you're describing is someone that didn't completely learn their lesson. And you're always going to go back and repeat the pattern if you didn't completely learn it. It's that simple. So the boomerang effect, it's truly okay, so you didn't quite learn it, you get to go back and do it again. And if they break through that and the pattern never continues, then they did figure it out. And so when patterns repeat and people get frustrated, they have a tendency to work a little harder to figure out why that happened, because they don't like the pattern. They don't want the pattern. So that's the mental body. They get to work through the pattern. Why is it happening? And then they get to figure out emotionally how it's impacting them, and they get to process through that. And then they get to figure out what their lesson is on a spiritual level. And they get to see how it's impacting them physically too, because it's going to be stored in the body somewhere. So it's one of the bodies was missed if it's coming back. So one of the bodies was not processed. And that's why the patterns happen, if that makes sense.
Do you think yeah, that does make sense. Do you think it's common for people? I think you and I have talked about this before, and you've brought it up, is our bodies are not meant to be like a dumpster, to hold on to these things. And when we do have a breakthrough, what is the most common, like, obviously, unless you had an example, but uh pinpointing like the residue, right? Of like maybe one of the bodies is like it's cleaned out, but there's still stuff in there, and it's fully hasn't been. What are some of the tools you've given some of your clients to really go back in there, um, to, clean that up, or also have another breakthrough where, like you said, it breaks that cycle or that pattern?
Right. Well, it's really interesting because the people don't have never learned for the most part and figured out that uh, the, part of the reason why these things keep happening is because of the way the physical body hangs on to anything that isn't love. So anything that isn't love gets stored in the body, and it's because you're meant to process through it as a living being. You're meant to process through everything and not ignore it, not shove it down, not pretend like it doesn't exist. You're here to process through all your stuff so that you can learn everything and move on to the next world, the next life. And yes, Lexi, yes, I am. I am winning this contest. So, sorry, another comment. I haven't blinked once since this live stream has started. Okay, then you win, Lexi. You win.
Like, so
I concede defeat. So that's part of the issue. It's not like human beings, for the most part, didn't get the memo. I love you too, John. She said.
Love you.
They didn't get the memo as far as how to. I almost said fart as far as fart, but I just gotta keep moving on and pretend like that didn't happen. They didn't get the memo as far as how they're storing the stuff inside of their bodies. So as an example, rage might be stored in the liver. So let's say you go through a really angry moment with a friend, a coworker, a loved one, parent, whatever, and it's just you get really wound up over it. This is what your liver does. It says, "I got you. No worries. I'm going to store all of this right here because this is where rage goes. And then as soon as you're ready, in a couple days, just when you've calmed down, let's process through this. Press on me. Do some meditation with me. Go through a process with me. Let's squeeze this out. Let's, mentally, emotionally figure this out. Let it go. And so that you can grow and move on. But until then, I'll just hang on to it. I know it'll just be a day or two. You weren't supposed to hang on to this stuff for long periods of time. All right, it's just we're spiritual beings. We weren't meant to hang on to all of that emotion inside our body the way that we do. But because we haven't figured that out, our body has become a dumping ground for a lot of tangible energy that becomes, it becomes very dense over time, and it creates a lot of disease for people. It's a real serious problem. So in order for you to start releasing some of that, first of all, you get to be aware that it's happening. You can feel it. Anyone that has an emotional state at any time during the day, unless you're totally dead inside, you're going to notice how your body is storing stuff. Oh my God, I feel it in my chest. It's tingling. Oh my God, my legs are numb. Whatever it is, you're going to have a physical experience. That physical experience isn't just the little tingles you get. It actually stores and sits in different places waiting for you to begin to release it. And it wasn't meant to sit there for a long amount of time. So this is part of how you get to break through with your physical body and to start to release some of this stuff. Because sometimes it turns into really bad things. It can turn into, it can turn into diseases. It can turn in all kinds of diseases, though, not just the physical diseases, but mental, neurological. It just gets to happen. It's really important. I get wound up over it because I've seen so many people go through the process of physical release, and everything changes. Their autoimmune disappears. Their cancer disappears. Their long-term physical injuries disappear. Their depression goes away. It's just, there's so much of it that goes if you know how to release it in the right way. And it's just really, really important to not overlook the storage of all the stuff. So, does that make? Am I tracking with you?
That was fire. I love how you broke that down. I think people misunderstand of why sometimes they feel sick, or why, oh, I feel off, and that's exactly what you're tuning into is the energetic energies that they're holding on to, and they don't they don't realize what they've been through and what they get to release. And so kind of touch on, and I could share too, is when you're with clients, what does that release look like in your work daily, and how I was thinking about this morning, is like, how does one come in and then one leave, meaning like the breakthrough, right? Is someone comes in a certain way, and then after the session, they're like a completely different person. They even look differently, their auras differently, energetically, and kind of just touch on that a little bit through, or I could touch on it through my experience too, if you want me to start.
I'd love you to. Let me just mention a couple things, and please tell your story.
Okay.
There is, when people come through, or if I work with people, it just depends on how I work with people, if it's an office or somewhere else, because I work with people all over the place and all over the planet. So part of how release happens, sometimes the hardest part of a release is how the emotional body translates it. The physical release, it might feel painful to them, or it might feel weird. And the mental state, they might be thinking, wow, I don't know really what is happening. And the spiritual body is just like, thank God, please just get it out. But the emotional body is the one that usually is going to demonstrate the biggest thing, because let's face it, the emotional body is a bit of a drama queen for everyone. It has the biggest voice. It's, I'm feeling emotional. And then, it's, I am angry. I am excited. I am frightened. Whatever it wants to say. And that's totally fine. But so crying, screaming, yelling, throwing up, because they're having an emotional reaction. That happens. What else happens? They'll feel fire in their body. They'll feel freezing cold. They'll start to shake. They'll sweat. they'll all of a sudden their sinuses will just flow, and then they'll have all this stuff all over their face. So there's a their eyes will get really dry. They'll get a headache, a lot of pressure in the head. There's sometimes just a great deal of restless leg and a lot of pain, depending on how they're releasing through their legs. It really depends on what's happening, the type of person they are, how they process emotions and their physical body, how they, how the bodies relate to each other. It really does depend on the individual. But anyway, what was your experience?
Yeah, I think you guys, in terms of Guru, how you broke that down, it paints that picture. I wanted to ask you first because so many people get things twisted on what your energy work is called. Some people are like, oh, do you do Reiki? Do you do this? Do you like what? How before I step into what the work has done for me, kind of touch on the biggest differences. And what your energy work is called, how it's kind of developed. I know it's kind of a deep question, but kind of before I go into my experience.
Sure. So I've coined it shamanic transmutation because basically that's what's happening. It's a transmuting of energy, turning it from one thing into another thing, on a minute level. And part of the reason why this is important when it comes to different energy is because it feels very comfortable with staying in people's bodies. The person invented the energy to begin with, and they created it to do a specific job, whether they realize it or not. And so, in order to take it out, it's important to alter it so it doesn't know what to do anymore. It's not sure what its job is. It doesn't know if it can go back because it doesn't quite feel the same. So I change it. I transmute it into something else, so that, you know, it's just gone, and people can move on with their lives. But I do so very carefully because I balance out the four bodies the best I can. Because you can't just remove energy and then not expect them to recreate it. Because they created it once, they'll do it again if they don't change their mindset. It's just the way it is. So if you don't hit all four bodies, you're not exactly going to be supporting and healing anyone. You're just going to be delaying maybe a bigger response, because energy, if it comes out of the body and looks around, it's gonna, when it goes back in or when it's recreated, it's gonna find a much more comfortable spot, and it'll be bigger because of it, because it's already learned a few things. It already knows what to do. Like it knows, oh well, if I do this, I'll anchor better and I'll do my job better, because it learns. It learns.
Mhm.
So you get to hit all four. So you get to start with processing through mentally and emotionally, saying, hey, why did you create this to begin with? And are you willing to let this go permanently? And this is what you get to do in order to do it. Are you willing to